Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal for this week's Inside Arsenal press pass with myself, Sam Dean of the Telegraph and Simon Collings of the Standard. How you going, boys? You all good?
All good, all good.
Busy end of the week for you two?
Been fairly busy for me. Busier than I thought because I've been having to sort of help out with doing some stuff around Tottenham and Thomas Frank coming in. So I've been lumped with a lot of that, but can't complain. It's nice. This is the nice point in the season where you're not working a weekend, so got that to look forward to at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've spent the last few days writing about Thomas Frank, Florian Wirtz, and Manchester United. So it's been an unusually non-Arsenal kind of week, but I think that's also because nothing major has quite happened yet with Arsenal this summer, despite a lot of murmurings and talk, obviously, which you guys will be very aware of too.
Yeah, I was saying earlier before we started recording this that the fact that we'd sort of pushed this back to a Friday this week, I really thought we were going to have something definitive to talk about, but it's just not happened. The week has sort of continued on from last week. As you said, lots of talk, lots of murmurings, but nothing definitive yet. I mean, what date is it now? Is that it's Friday the 13th. I should know that because my daughter was banging on about it this morning. Are you surprised? June the 13th, and we're still kind of in the... Things would obviously have moved on behind the scenes, but we're still kind of in the same situation that we were in, when the season ended.
The feeling I've got is that Andrea Berta is playing a very delicate game. I didn't think it would have needed to be this delicate, to be honest. I think we've spoken about this before, and what the expectation was, I think, at the end of the season was that he would effectively price up a few different options and then Arsenal will make a decision. What seems to be happening, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now, and I'm sure we'll come on to talking a bit about that and the challenges of reporting on this kind of thing. But what seems to be happening is that he's really trying to nail down every little detail on quite a few different options at once, almost cooking 3 or 4 dishes at one time before deciding which one to actually eat. I kind of assumed it would be, a chat with RB Leipzig, roughly what's it going to take, roughly what's he going to want for wages, for example, and then a decision. But it seems to be going further and deeper than that. And perhaps that's what's slowing it down a bit. But also, as we said last week, it is still mid-June. It's not late. It's just because other teams have been moving quite aggressively and quite early that Arsenal fans are getting a bit more jumpy. And that is reasonable because you look at Liverpool signing Florian Wirtz for 100 million plus, and you look at Man United moving strongly from Brian Mbeumo, having already signed Matheus Cunha. Obviously, Man City have just been on an absolute spending spree ahead of the Club World Cup. So it's reasonable and understandable that Arsenal fans are getting a little bit concerned. But yeah, it is still early, and I think too early to be panicked or nervous from an Arsenal perspective.
I mean, it's not just transfers, is it? I mean, we're still in the same situation with Thomas Partey. We don't know if he's staying, so it doesn't really feel like any real definitive decision has been taken in any way yet when it comes to the squad building. So yeah, as you said, I can understand completely why there are some sort of murmurings of discontent amongst the fan base at this point. We're going to talk about that. Obviously, we saw yesterday with strong reports in Portugal about Victor Gyokeres and a formal offer being made by Arsenal. So there is sort of some things to talk about transfer-wise in terms of that. We've got Zinchenko's future that we're going to discuss as well, which is going to be, I think, an interesting sort of point of discussion throughout the summer, who potentially could go. Zinchenko and Kivior both plastered on the front pages of the Italian newspapers yesterday about potential moves for them this summer. We do have a quiz, everyone, as well. We're going back to a penalty shootout style quiz to finish the show today, see if Simon Collings can redeem himself after a couple of awful weeks so far from Si. So we'll see how he gets on a little bit later on the show and that. But we'll start with Gyokeres, shall we? Because it was interesting. We were talking about it on WhatsApp during the day yesterday as these reports were coming in from Portugal that that an offer has been made from Arsenal. A former colleague of mine, Bruno Andre, sort of was the first to report that early on in the morning. And then within a couple of hours, multiple reports from different outlets in Portugal were backing up the fact that Arsenal had made an offer for Victor Gyokeres. And they went into quite, good detail as well about a meeting in Menorca between Berta, sporting director of Sporting, Gyokeres' agents. And it was really big news over in Portugal. But as of yet, I haven't been able to confirm that. I'm guessing neither of you have been able to confirm that because you haven't written stories on it yet. We haven't seen anyone over in England be able to confirm that. And I've had lots of questions from people like, why is it coming from Portugal? Why haven't we had anything on this from England? I think it's quite an interesting thing to talk about in terms of how we report or what we need to be able to get before we can report. Because obviously these reports are pretty strong from Portugal, especially the sort of finer detail within the reports. But that's not, we can't just go off the back of that, can we? It's just absolutely impossible. We need to make sure through our sources that we have information backed up before we can cover it ourselves.
Yeah, you need to have it double sourced, don't you? And I mean, the fact it's all come from Portugal would suggest that is where, the origins of the sources are coming from in terms of those stories. I mean, the thing I will say, just from reading, particularly the report in Record, like the level of detail in it, was quite extensive for the story. I mean, to have the location of the meeting, the personnel of the meeting, you're reading that, it kind of felt, okay, this feels quite legitimate. It feels pretty concrete. But as you say, and I'm sure you've spoken to similar people, haven't been able to confirm the information, and you can't just run it based off what you're hearing from those reports elsewhere. So I do think it is interesting, just in terms of the deal itself. I mean, we saw Gyokeres and he posted on social media. We obviously had the quotes earlier in the week from the sporting president. It already feels like, I mean, if that is the player that Arsenal are going for, it already feels like quite a lot of what Dino was saying, sort of smoke and mirrors. It feels a bit kind of complicated, a bit kind of messy. And yeah, the fact that it's only come out in Portugal, I think also kind of suggests where it's coming from. But it's so far that kind of the past sort of 2 days, I think everything around that deal has been very interesting. I thought the quotes from the sporting president actually were quite telling. I mean, that read to me like the sort of the agent had touted round, this is the fee, and quite publicly the president's come out and say that is pretty strong stuff. And already you've got Gyokeres sounding off back, so it already feels like a sort of a weird deal at the moment to me.
Yeah, from a journalistic perspective, this is a great story that's sort of emerged over the past few days. The issue is that it's all being waged in Portugal, and it's all kind of what seems to be beef between the Gyokeres camp and the sporting camp. And I do think that's genuinely fascinating how that dynamic has worked, because obviously the sporting director, Hugo Viana, left for Man City halfway through the season. So any agreement that Gyokeres and his agent may feel they had would have been with him. And then obviously he's left, and the president's saying, well, that's not quite the same as a deal with me. And obviously the president was very willing to go into detail about those conversations. And it seems to be effectively that Sporting are unhappy that the Gyokeres camp are trying to get him out for that price, which I think they said they would never sell for 60 plus 10 euros. So clearly that's the price that the sporting agent is trying to bring to Sporting with other clubs. The question is, who's offering that? Because it's not just Arsenal who've been looking at Gyokeres. You hear a lot about Manchester United too, and obviously the Ruben Amorim connection's really strong there with Gyokeres. So it's who's offering that, how much of an offer is it, how much of a conversation is it? And I think that's also a fine line journalistically, that you and I could have a chat and I could sort of suggest buying your dinner, but that's different to making a formal offer in writing with it all priced out. So it's one person's conversation is another person's offer. And I thought it was interesting as well last night that other sources in Portugal and reports in Portugal were saying, no, it's not an official bid by Arsenal. It's just more of an approach and a conversation. So that kind of definition is generally quite interesting and tricky for journalists at this time of year. And my gut, based on the conversations that I've had and what we can see in Portugal, is that my gut is that this was not a formal lodging of a bid, signed by Tim Lewis and Josh Kroenke. I don't think that's the stage that Arsenal are at with this one. But equally, talks are clearly going on, and no one's ever denied to me that Arsenal are in talks and looking at what it might take to sign Gyokeres, as well as other players. That's the crucial thing, as well as other players.
You're loving your cooking metaphors today. So I think that's two in the first 10 minutes of the show.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that these Gyokeres reports have also come sort of on the back of where it felt like the pendulum had just started to swing a little bit towards Sesko as well, hadn't it? In terms of the race for the two of them for Arsenal, and now suddenly it's like Gyokeres has burst back onto the scene. The Sesko stuff's been quite interesting in the last week or so as well. We've seen in the build up to the end of the first transfer window of the summer ahead of the Club World Cup, there's the sort of Saudi offers coming in for Sesko, if you want to call them offers. It's obviously an interest from Saudi in Sesko. I think both of you have reported that, you know, those offers were there, or the interest was there, but Sesko at the moment is sort of leaning towards staying in Europe, which I think is absolutely understandable at that point. When you first sort of saw these stories about Gyokeres, I think my first instinct was like, was this a bit of a sort of hurry up type thing from the Sesko camp? But obviously the fact it's emerged from Portugal suggests it's not. But it's still quite kind of confusing in terms of which direction Arsenal are heading in when it comes to the striker at this point, again, halfway through June.
Also, it's not necessarily as simple as Arsenal saying, which do you want? Because it might be a case of, well, do you want Gyokeres at 55 million or Sesko at 67 million? It's not or is it Gyokeres at 62 million and Sesko at 70 million? So the decision isn't just literally one or the other. You kind of have to know the price to a degree, make the informed decision. And also, I'm saying this knowing that it might sort of get people very excited, and I don't really have any information beyond this, but I keep getting told it might not be either of those two. Those are the two that are making the most noise in terms of the deals, and they seem to be the two that Arsenal are pushing the most on. But I know for a fact that Berta has been exploring other options too in the past few weeks, and I still wouldn't want to put any kind of bet or anything to say it definitely will be one of Sesko or Gyokeres. I think there are others they're looking at much more quietly than they are these two. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if they prefer to work in the shadows on someone else, and then these two workers are kind of smokescreen to a degree. So I'm not ruling that out yet. But what I am certain is that they know who they want. It's just at what price and when that comes out, because I don't think anyone else does.
It's part of it as well, just the different sort of approach. We kind of spoke about it before on other shows that, you know, this is the first summer that we're going to get a look of how Arsenal operate under a new, you know, sporting director, and certainly for Edu and the way Arsenal operated. I know they did have instances where they pivoted to other players like Trossard, and, you know, but ordinarily with Arsenal and certainly Arteta and Edu, it kind of felt like they would get fixated on a player, and this is the player that they would want to go and get. Like, look at Moreno last summer. You know, they were dead set on, right, we're getting him, and it would drag on for quite a bit. Calafiori kind of set on it. It feels like, from speaking to people outside and looking at it, it's more of a case where they're kind of exploring multiple deals at the same time and working out different prices, which feels very different to me from what used to be the practice under Edu, where you would kind of be like, right, this is the guy we want. We're going all out for this. Let's try and get that deal done. This kind of feels a bit different, where you know, you're juggling different sort of deals, and then when you know all the parameters of what the price is going to be for all these players, you then can execute and bring the one in you want.
Yeah. While we're on this, there's a couple of questions that I've asked people to send in, and I think it's probably worth sort of going over them now, because it's kind of along these lines. So some of the members of the Inside Arsenal Discord have got in touch. Mark says, if you can fit this in, what do you think is behind the reports of Sesko versus Gyokeres? It seems strange that these Gyokeres bids have surfaced after so much reported interest in Sesko. Do you think that none of it is actually true, and it's just noise? And then Jezza says, are you guys convinced that either it is Sesko or Gyokeres is a solution? Is there an argument of, say, getting Watkins in and a world-class winger, and then maybe going all out for Isak in a year, or a similar stature forward? So again, kind of along the lines of what you've been talking about there, you know, so it would a surprise like a Watkins or I don't know, we've seen Julian Alvarez mentioned and players like that. Is there a chance that something like this, like you're suggesting, Dino, is just they suddenly come out from absolutely nowhere and focus their attentions elsewhere?
There certainly is a chance of it. And again, that goes back to Simon's point that this is the first window with Andrea Berta. So us as journalists are getting used to how he works. and the way he works might well be to drop a surprise deal on a Saturday morning or whenever. I think the Alvarez one's really interesting, and I should be clear here that I've not got any information of my own to suggest they are currently pursuing him, but that's not to suggest they're not. And given his connection with Atletico Madrid, that feels like one he could do quite quietly, you would think. Given that he knows everyone who works there, it wouldn't need to be played out in public in perhaps the same way.
Do you think that would be a good move? Tilly actually on the Discord as well says, "Hi Charles, any updates or whispers around Alvarez? What are your thoughts on him? I think he would explode in our team." So although all the focus has been on Sesko and Gyokeres, do you think someone like Alvarez and the way he plays would be, do you think that would actually be a real sort of game changer for Arsenal? Because he's completely different to either of the two we've been talking about.
I'm going to leave Simon to answer that question because I know he's got strong views on the matter. But just quickly before we do that, just on Watkins, and that's one I do have some information on. That, from what I'm told, there's really, really not much expectation that it's going to be Watkins this summer. I obviously they like him, tried in January, and I think there's a lot of sense to be found in going for him. But from what I'm told, I wouldn't expect that. I don't think he's at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, thank you. I was going to say, as listeners and viewers know, I'm a big Asmir Begovic fan, but I'm an even bigger Julian Alvarez fan. I do think he would be. We chatted, didn't we? Just off air, Sam. We were sort of, I was saying, I just think he would be so good in that system. I mean, he's an absolute relentless presser of the ball. His goal record's very good. His availability, something that Arteta bangs on about. I think he's done like 50 games, 3 seasons in a row. He could probably play wide if you wanted. He could play with Havertz in a 2. I think he'd be absolutely brilliant. I think Atletico paid 80 million a year ago.
So expensive, surely.
I don't know how much. I think that he have to check. I think he got like 30 goals, all comps. I think he's had a good season. I just think he'd be so expensive. And I saw Simeone spoke, I think, a few weeks ago, and he kind of referenced, I think he even referenced Arsenal, Liverpool, PSG, kind of said that every big club wants him, but he's not going anywhere. I think he would be so expensive to get out. But yeah, I personally think he'd be brilliant in that team.
Yeah, I agree. I think he would be. You remember when Gabriel Jesus came in that first 6 months of the season, when he was just genuinely it's just one of the best 6 months performances I've seen from a new signing. And Arteta said he transformed, he changed our world, or whatever the quote was. I kind of look at Alvarez and think it would be a similar sort of signing in addition to what, those first 6 months of Jesus, when, the relentless pressing you're talking about, the finishing as well, and the movement and all that sort of stuff. I just think it'd be very, very similar to what Jesus brought when he arrived. But the transfer fee would surely be, we're talking a lot of money for Sesko and Gyokeres, but the transfer fee for Alvarez would be way in excess of whatever either of those two would cost. And it'd basically end your chances of signing a left winger in the same window, surely, if you push the boat out for someone like Alvarez.
I think that winger point is one that's sort of been a bit missed in the past few days, that the cost of the striker will affect the cost of the winger. Obviously, we know that they're prioritising the number 9 first and want to get that done and get the player they want for the price they want. But, if they went for a cheaper option at 9, that would leave more money in the bank to get a winger. And vice versa. Obviously, if they went for the expensive one, as you say, it would leave very little in the bank to get a number 9. I wonder. We know obviously there's a lot of talk about Rodrigo, and I'm not sure how likely that is, to be honest, based on what I've been told. But someone like him would be enormously expensive, sort of a huge transfer fee, massive wages, and would sort of weigh on the kind of money they could spend on a striker, I think. But it's possible. I mean, this is a debate that's been going probably for the last year among Arsenal fans of which position is more important to upgrade. Is it more important to get a world-class left winger or to get a world-class number 9? And if they feel that they can't get a world-class number 9, or they're not convinced that the number 9s available this summer are good enough, then maybe it does make sense to go and target the left winger position instead. But all the noises and all the movement would suggest they want to get this striker position nailed down first as the top priority. And we know they're willing to spend big money on that. So, yeah, interesting balance though. And as I say, that debate's been raging for a long time. And I've kind of flip-flopped between it myself. My gut says if everyone's fit in that starting 11, I think the left wing position is the place to target to upgrade. But I can see the argument for striker too.
Yeah. Well, where do you stand on that side? I think the left wing is hugely important. Obviously, all the talk is about number 9 this summer, but I really do think the left wing is hugely important. I know that, I'm not having to go at Martinelli or Trossard. I think they're very good players, and I wouldn't want either of them to go. But I just think if you can upgrade in that position and left side, even if you're playing Kai Havertz as number 9, I think that would drastically improve Arsenal next season.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I think when everyone is fit, I think it's the one position in the 11 that you could upgrade the most. But I think you're lacking the most depth at centre forward, partly because of Jesus' injury.
Yeah.
Which makes it a tough one because I think Havertz is a very good centre forward, and buying a centre forward that is better than Havertz will be difficult. But I think you need more beyond him. We touched a bit on Watkins, and I know Sam sort of says it doesn't seem that likely, but that's why some people sort of suggested the argument of saying, look, if you could get Watkins in that sort of 30 million or 40 million bracket, what they bid before, and then if it left you the money to go and get, a sort of 80 million pound winger, I can understand the attraction of that because of the ability to have an upgrade there. I still think, for me, and I think this is the club's view, the priority is a centre forward, just because I think you need more depth there. I think, on that left side, you've got enough options. Yes, definitely you get better quality, but I think just purely in terms of number and depth, I think you have to get that centre forward. And I think you have to dedicate the majority of the budget there. But I do agree that in purely first 11 terms, that is the one position on the pitch where I feel like you can upgrade more than anywhere else. I think the rest of the team is pretty much as high a level as you would want it to be.
AJ on the Discord also sort of asked about this. He says, what would your thoughts be ahead of the season if Sesko is our only forward signing and we stick with Martinelli and Trossard as our left wing pairing for the 3rd season in a row, essentially being one short on last year's because of Jesus' ACL?
Feels... I just feel like you would... I feel like you'd still be a bit short there in terms of numbers.
Yeah,
particularly from what Arteta said right at the end of the season. He was, in those last few press conferences, he was pretty bullish on, the need to add goals, numbers. I don't think bringing one in is quite fulfilling that need. It's interesting. We talk about sort of finances and budget and things. The fact that they were kind of looking at Sane, who would have been a free addition. The wages he's getting in Galatasaray look absolutely astronomical, so I can kind of see why he's going there. But the fact they were looking at that, I think, is a clear indication that they agree with they need more than just a striker.
I think it depends a bit where they see Waneri playing next year. If you're looking at the sort of frontline options you've got, is he the backup for Saka on the right wing, as he was the second half of last season? Or is he going to be competition for Odegaard and Marino and Rice in the midfield? I think that kind of affects where your squad planning, and you imagine Berta's kind of squad depth chart and Arteta's flipboard. I think that the positioning of where Waneri goes has quite a big impact, I think. And also, obviously, Jesus is injured for a long time and has had big injury issues for the past couple of years, but people can't forget he's there and he can cover 3 positions up front. And crucially, he earns really big wages. So he's a massive sort of commitment in terms of financial resources still, and he's there. And obviously, there's very, very little prospect of him getting sold this summer, given his injury issues. So I think it's very easy for fans to forget that he's there because he is injured. But in terms of financial planning and squad composition, his presence is kind of relevant and pretty important still.
Yeah. I think you're sort of looking at the dates when Jesus could potentially be back available. I think what you're thinking November-ish is probably around the time that he might be coming back. Got the injury in January, didn't he? So November's about 10 months. So you think around sort of November-ish, he might be on the verge of playing again.
Timber got injured in August ACL and came back in May, didn't he?
Yeah, he played the final game, didn't he? Came on the final game.
Yeah. So it's less than that. That was less than a full year, but that Timber one was quite a unique injury in that he actually didn't do any damage to any other part of his knee. It's quite a strange scenario where it was literally just his ACL, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know the nature of the Jesus injury, but the Timber one is so rare that I presume that's not the case for Jesus. So it might be a bit.
When you compare how both went off after those injuries, like Timber sort of carried on, didn't he, and walked off. Jesus was very much stretchered off and looking in I don't know if that makes any difference in terms of how serious it was, but when you sort of compare what they were both like, one looked in significantly more trouble than the other did.
I would agree with that. And as I say, that the Timber one was such a unique, rare case that it's unlikely that Jesus is in the same boat. But Rodri came back, didn't he, this season?
Yeah.
I think he got injured in September. So, yeah, it doesn't seem to be a full 12-month cycle, this ACL recovery these days, which hopefully bodes well for, as you say, maybe November, December time. But then even then, the issue with ACLs for a lot of people, apart from Timber, which is, again, maybe explained by the nature of his injury, is that it's not just coming back to play, it's then building up that resilience and that sharpness again. And there are some medical experts who say it takes another year to get back to top shape after returning to play.
Yeah.
And, some players never do. So it's a really tricky one. And only time will tell.
Yeah, I think what might have helped Timber is he came back in May, played a game, but then he had pre-season, didn't he? So the demands were less. He could train, he could build himself up again. If Jesus comes back in October, November time, it's like thrown straight back into the relentlessness of the Premier League and the Champions League. So it might be a little bit different in terms of the strain you put on your knee in those early weeks. In terms of sort of potential sales, players going out, we've not really seen too much movement yet, but there has been a lot of noise, especially from Italy. Like I said, there's Zinchenko and Kivior were plastered over the front of yesterday's Gazzetta, with Milan being interested in the pair of them. We've seen Gerald Hato, who I think, Sam, you were the first to report Arsenal interest in way back when, like a year or even more than that, again being mentioned as a possible target for this summer. Do you kind of think any potential move for a Hato would be tied into the futures of Kivior, Zinchenko this summer?
Yeah, I would have thought so, just based on, as we said, that squad depth chart. I'm not sure I was the first to report Hato. Maybe I was. It's very kind of you to. It's very kind of you to say that. I feel like I might not have been, but either way, they absolutely were in for him big time. Really liked him. Really do like him. I don't know this summer how advanced it is. I do know that this summer Chelsea are also looking at him. And I suspect Chelsea could probably offer him more guaranteed game time, given Saliba, Gabriel, and the left-back Calafiori, Lewis Skelly's situation. But I think we said on this show last week that, for me, I think Hato makes the perfect sense as a squad addition because of his age, his experience, the Ajax connection, which clearly worked with Timber, and also the fact he covers centre-back and left-back, which obviously makes a big difference when you're looking at maybe replacing someone like Kivior who plays in that position too. I think of the two, I think Kivior and Zinchenko is a very interesting one. For me, it seems like Kivior is the easier to sell because his value is quite high, his wages aren't massive, and obviously he's got a very good reputation in Italy from his time there before, and he had a very good second half of the season. So I think now feels to me like the perfect time to sell Kivior. But Zinchenko's it's a tricky one to sort of work out because obviously he is on big wages at Arsenal, like first team star wages at Arsenal. And he's not been playing in a role or having the status that you would expect for that money. So it would require another club to effectively gamble that he would be able to do that for them, which he's not been doing for Arsenal, which obviously makes it a lot harder. And he's got 1 year left on these big wages. So there might be value for him in thinking, well, actually, if I stay for a year, I've got a lot more options as a free agent next year when my wage demands won't be quite as problematic. So I don't know. I just have the feeling, which is mostly feeling, but also a little bit of information, that I don't think a move for him is potentially as imminent as we might all assume, given he's got 1 year left and it makes sense for Arsenal to sell him now. It makes sense for Arsenal to sell him now, but it might not make sense for Zinchenko to go just yet. But let's see how it pans out, because obviously there's a long way to go in the window and different clubs will have different needs depending on how pre-season goes or if there are any injuries or anything like that.
If he does stay side, do you think he was underused last season, Zinchenko? I do.
I think so. More in the sense that, and we've sort of said this before, haven't we, with Arteta, where he kind of has a set way of how he views players. We talked about it with Tierney, where he just sees him is he can't invert and do that what role he wants to, so he didn't want to use him. Whereas I think Arsenal fans for years have said, why not just play Zinchenko in midfield? does it for Ukraine, did it for City when he needed it, did it early in his career, and Arteta was like, nah, he's left back. And then I think it was that PSV second leg game, I think that last 16 was the first time he started a game there, scored a goal, played well, had another few games there, and I think he was an absolutely fine sort of serviceable option there. And I think, again, he would be, for sort of Carabao Cup games, for, Champions League league phase games where you're in a good position. I think he could definitely play there. We know he's a very good person in the dressing room. I think pretty much every player says he's the funniest lad in the squad, get on really well. So he's kind of one of those, we're not in that era of Termination FC where, we can't get rid of him, let's just rip up his contract, get rid of him. Like, I don't, other than you're not going to get a fee for him, I think if you had to have Zinchenko stay for a year, a bit like with Tierney, where it's like, stay for a year, fine, he's a good guy, he can do a job for us, he won't cause any issues. It's probably the same as Zinchenko. I don't think Arteta would be absolutely throwing his toys out of the pram saying Zinchenko's got to be here. I think the debate you'd have for Zinchenko would be, do I want to have another season where I'm not going to play many games? Or as Sam says, I think it's a view of a lot of players now, that if you wait and become a free agent, your options are far better and your wages will stay better because there's no fee involved. So I personally would have no issue with him staying. I think he'd be a good, solid option. And I think he's a good person to have around the team. And I do agree. I think he was a bit underused, particularly in that midfield role when Arsenal had so many issues. Particularly when you think back to the days when Odegaard was injured for 2-3 months. He could have had Zinchenko in there for a period of time and could have probably done a job.
Yeah, it's when I always go back to moments when Arteta will sit there in press conferences and he talks about wanting a bigger squad and having more players available. But then you have a player like Zinchenko, a top international player, and he just didn't get the sort of minutes that he could have got, would really help rotation wise. Both scored actually midweek for their national teams. Good goal by Zinchenko, coming in late, lovely finish into the bottom corner as well. Thomas Partey, we're still waiting for news at the moment on what's going on there. I'm surprised that one's gone on as long as it has without a firm decision either way. My understanding on it is still that nothing has massively moved on, but both, I think, parties are working to sort something out very soon in terms of one way or the other. If Partey was to go, if he does leave, if they can't come to an agreement, do you think another six is, or not necessarily another out-and-out six, but do you think another midfielder isn't as an absolute necessity this summer? Could you cope with just Zubimendi coming in and Jorginho and Partey go in, and then maybe using Zinchenko more, using Miles Lewis-Skelly more as a central midfield option? Or do you think they simply have to go out and replace if you lose two players with such experience, Jorginho and Partey, in the same summer?
I think replace. I think losing two in that position, unless you're going to say, look, Rice can do it. But that's a lot of weight on Zubimendi's shoulders to handle that, coming in, learning a new system, playing so many games every week in that role. I think it would be a really, really demanding thing to not have any kind of out-and-out backup. What I don't think, though, is that they need someone who's super, super expensive and sort of a world-class player of Thomas Partey's structure and wage demands. I think you'd hope your recruitment team could find a sort of young, talented number six who can sort of pick up the slack a bit, play 20 minutes at the end of games, play a couple of European games, do your League Cup, FA Cup, and sort of develop nicely behind Zubimendi and allow Rice to keep playing in that position that he's kind of made his own on the left eight. But yeah, my gut says Partey out, Jorginho out, and then Zubimendi in wouldn't be enough in that position. And I think for Lewis-Skelly, maybe that is the long-term role he's going to take, but it's such a different one to what he's been playing now. And you don't want to suddenly derail his development by making him sort of crowbarred in as a sort of backup number 6 too, while also trying to be an inverted left back and potentially a left eight. You kind of have to sort of, to use an Artetaism, you've got to cook him slowly, don't you? You can't just chuck him in and do all that. On Zubimendi, by the way, did anybody watch the Spain-Portugal Nations League final? Because I thought he was fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't see it all, but I switched on, saw the majority of the second half and extra time, and what I saw, he was very good. He surprised me, actually, in terms of, when you look at the goal he scored, that sort of run that he made from deep, and that wasn't the only one he made during the game. His sort of running in power from midfield and getting towards the edge of the box is just something I don't really associate with him in my very limited knowledge of watching him play. So he did surprise me a little. I saw more to his game in that sort of 90 minutes than I'd seen before.
He was also, as well, I don't know about you guys. I've only really seen him play for Sociedad, and I've not seen him play loads for Sociedad. Saw him play against Man United and things like that. The difference seeing him play, no massive disrespect to Sociedad, but in a team with a higher caliber of player, I just thought he looked, levels above the player when I've watched him play for Sociedad. Two things that stood out for me. I mean, his kind of willingness to play sort of progressive passes and get the ball forward, particularly, breaking through the lines, attacking players. And also, he was far more like dynamic on the ball and like quicker than I kind of thought. I assumed from what I'd read and the bits I'd seen that he was kind of, not that, as you say, mobile player, but like there were bits where he was absolutely like charging forward, like dribbling past people, going past people. And I do think it will be quite a shift in how Arsenal play from that position. I think he's a very different mould to Thomas Partey in that respect. Partey's quite a sort of languid style, kind of. He's not the sort of player to go dribbling, charging up the pitch, is he? I just thought it was very interesting. But yeah, I was very, very impressed. And I also like following the game on social media as well. You could kind of sense the excitement in the Arsenal fans, which probably wasn't there in January, maybe because of the context. It wasn't what the club needed at that point. The excitement about the signing that probably didn't exist when it was first sort of mooted that he was going to be coming to Arsenal.
What did you make of the Spanish press or certain elements of the Spanish press suddenly deciding on sort of Monday morning or Tuesday night, whatever it was, that he was going to Real Madrid? What did you guys think when that was all coming out?
Operation Zubimendi was all over the front page of Marca, wasn't it? The next day, at the special request of Florentino Perez, no doubt. I don't know. I've seen it all before. I mean, it's kind of tough again. Then when all the information that you've got and gathered over the time is almost in sort of is polar opposite to what you suddenly then see appearing in Spain, and you start to kind of doubt yourself and what you've been told and all that sort of stuff. But obviously that seems to have died down in the space of about 48 hours. The noises from Spain now are very, very different to what they were on Monday morning when, all guns were sort of blazing towards Zubimendi in Madrid.
But that is the Madrid, machine, for want of a better word, isn't it? And I do think that is slightly interesting in the context of, William Saliba, which I think Arsenal are obviously working to time down to a new contract. Hopefully he'll do that. But if that doesn't happen and rumbles on, I do think that it's just how that Madrid. I mean, it happened a bit with Trent, didn't it, as well, where they kind of just everything around it gathers speed. When I did see that, it was just like, wow, that is kind of just front page. Here we go. I mean, they did it a few weeks ago. Nico Williams, the same thing, wasn't it? Where it was just out of nowhere, suddenly that's on the front page, and that is the kind of the news machine and power of Real Madrid, isn't it? But I think it's one of those. I think when that deal is finally done, I think a lot of Arsenal fans will just be happy that it's what feels like something that's been drumming on for 6 months now. We've been talking about that transfer.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about with Trent. Trent only made that decision 2 weeks ago, even though he's absolutely fluent in Spanish. No, he was just learning for the sake of it. He only made it two weeks ago. Yeah, no, that was interesting. I do. Yeah, the Saliba Madrid machine is certainly going to ramp up if Arsenal can't get that over the line. Those talks over the line at some point.
The thing is with just on this sort of the Zubimendi Madrid thing, we've all got the same information from different people, and we're all pretty confident he's going to Arsenal. Like, we can say that with a massive degree of confidence. But also, when it's Real Madrid, you're like, oh, it's Real Madrid.
Yeah,
it's the one club in world football that you're like, if anyone's going to somehow undo everything that's been done by Arsenal, it's going to be Real Madrid. So I can see why fans are a little bit like, oh, what's going on here? But I really just don't think that's even possible.
I feel like Arsenal fans as well have borne the brunt of the big two in Spain and the sort of the way the press operates more than most in England as well over the years. There's a lot of past history. So when it starts to happen, you do start to sort of doubt and oh no, I know where this is heading. But certainly with this one, like you said, Sam, I'm fairly confident, as confident as you possibly can be, that it's not going to be too long before we have to wait. I've got a couple more questions I want to quickly go in, or at least I've got one more before we head towards the quiz and seeing if Simon can redeem himself. It was one from Sam. That's it here on the Discord. He says, any thoughts on how ambitious we seem to be with our centre-half targets? I was surprised to hear how interested we were in Howson. Now we hear Gahey and potentially Hato, all players who would expect significant playing time while we have the best centre-half pairing around currently. Is this maybe a sign that Arteta may be looking to rotate a lot more this coming season, given how many hamstrings have been going on in the squad? Or do you think he looks at these players as being able to play multiple positions to get their minutes?
I think that is a very, very good question and a very good point, and a potential issue for Arsenal this summer. For example, on Howson, my information from day one was that he just simply wasn't going to Arsenal. Obviously, they wanted him, and that's been well reported by some of the top journalists out there, but it wasn't going to happen. He was never going to go there because he knew he wasn't going to play that much. He had other priorities. And I think that's going to be true of a lot of defenders. Someone like Mark Gahey, obviously reported by The Athletic, and I'm sure that's right, because we know the calibre of Jason Nicholas's transfer reporting. He'd be great for Arsenal. He'd be an amazing addition, but I struggle to see why he would want to come to Arsenal and play behind Saliba and Gabriel, presumably. So that's quite a difficult situation to fix, because everyone knows that those two centre-backs are so established and so sort of strong as a duo that to come in with them is naturally going to limit your game time. So you've either got to really, really back yourself that you're going to be ahead of one of them, or expect one of them to leave, which we think is very unlikely, especially now Gabriel signed a new contract, obviously, last week. And yeah, why would you do that, really? Unless you've been told you're going to play loads and loads of games, but it won't be every game, you know that. So I do wonder a bit where they might land with it. I think Hato makes probably more sense than Gahey, just based on his age, and he might not be expecting to be playing every minute of every game for the next couple of years, but over time he would grow. But someone like Gahey, I mean, I think he'd be a brilliant addition, albeit very expensive. But I just can't see what would be in it for him beyond obviously a nice contract and being an Arsenal player.
Yeah, so, I suppose the best footballers do back themselves, though, don't they? Because I mean, I'll use Jurriën Timber as an example. He came in when Ben White was very much sort of nailed down as Arsenal's best right back, and you're like, where's Timber going to really play? And obviously we didn't see him in the first season because of the injury, but now you'd probably say that Timber's now first choice right back at Arsenal. You know, he'll probably start the season as right back, won't he? So he's forced his way into that team. So I think the best players who really sort of believe themselves might think, well, you know, this is a challenge. I'm here to embrace it. Let's see if I can get myself into this team.
But Timber was a couple of years younger and coming from Holland, so obviously you kind of expect him to sort of develop more slowly and to sort of adjust to the Premier League a bit, and that he would be accepting of that. And that's happened effectively, I know, with the injury. But someone like Gahey, who's obviously mid-20s, England regular, captain Crystal Palace, that's a very different kind of context in which he's arriving. I don't know, what do you think, Si?
Yeah, I think Gahey would be very difficult. I know he's got a year left in his contract and he probably will move. I just think trying to sell that to him, that you can come here and compete with these two when they basically played more than anyone. For me, I think a big thing would be signing someone who's versatile and versatility, because the pitch you could make to them, and you probably didn't have this with Dean Howson, is, you know, if you're someone like Hato, you can say, look, you can come play centre back, you'll probably get minutes at left back. You know, if you've got different ways for them to get in the team, you can kind of sell it as, look, we'll find ways to get you minutes, you can get loads of opportunities. Whereas if you're coming in as an out and out centre back, the only way you're getting in that team, you know, is if one of Gabriel Saliba's not playing, which I think makes it really hard. Whereas if you can sign someone with a bit of versatility, which Arsenal do like doing anyway, I think it makes it easier to sell. And also that age as well, I think is key. I think for someone like Gahey, you'd think at the point of his career, he's going to want to go and be, you know, regular starter. I know he's been linked with Newcastle, I think Chelsea as well, hasn't he? But that'll be, for Arsenal, I think is probably the hardest position to recruit in, from other than maybe getting someone to come and be Bukayo Saka's backup, persuading someone to be backup to those two guys who are absolutely key to the team. Just sign one of them to a new long-term contract. You want to do the same with the other one. It's a really hard pitch, that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, in Takehiro Tomiyasu, you've literally got the perfect player to do exactly what you've described, haven't you? But is it a case, I mean, we talked about Jesus in November, but I mean, can you even factor Tomiyasu into next season? It feels like it's very, very difficult to do that.
And I think when everyone is fit, you'd be quite happy with that. The sort of interesting signing, which I think, or attempted signing, which I think again was James McNicholas, Gunner blog, who mentioned that they wanted that Victor Reis who went to City, didn't he? And that is the kind of profile. I mean, he's 18, he's obviously very young, but that is the kind of profile I think that almost makes a bit of sense, because if you say someone who's sort of 18 years old, come in, learn from these two brilliant centre backs, you'll get minutes. By the time you're sort of 2021, Gabriel's going to be 30. Your opportunities will come, and that is the kind of age profile I'd look at. I think if I was looking at a centre back, and a pure centre back that is, I think it'd be a much easier sell than someone who's mid-20s playing every week. If you've got a young, really talented player, for them to have the opportunity to learn off those centre backs, what a chance that would be.
Right, that's a good time, as I need to go into the quiz. So get ready, get your hats on. You're thinking hats on, everyone. Right, as I said at the start, I'm downstairs today, so I don't have access to the piggy bank that sits on the shelf next to me as upstairs. So I have one of my daughter's hair clips here. So I'm going to put it in one hand, and you've got to choose whoever. I'll go to you, Si, because I think you need some help at the moment. So
You do, yeah.
You choose, is it in my right hand or is it in my left hand? And then you get to choose which questions you have, one or two.
Left hand, please. Your left hand.
You're correct. You are correct. So you're going to have question batch 1, or you're going to have question batch 2?
I'll have the easy batch, please.
That is not.
I'm going to go first. I think I'm going to try and set the tone. I think I've gone second both times and done terribly. So,
but does that mean you're having questions 1 or 2? Which one? Which batch? A or B?
Batch 1, and I'd like to kick first, please.
Okay, right. Here we go. What is the score? What is the score? Is it 3-0 to you?
No, I did. I won. Dino won the 2 shootouts, and then I won.
Did you win Gestaguna last week?
I won Gestaguna with Vito Minone.
Okay.
So it's 2-1.
2-1.
2-1.
Okay. Right, I was doing you a bit down there, then, Si. I thought you were 3-0 down. 2-1's not.
I mean the Minone victory was 2 bald men fighting over a comb. It was not a pretty watch.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's because Si gives off like a defeated vibe.
I mean, you two there with your pristine hair talking about bald men McComb. Immediately, Dino's winning this one. Dino. Right. Okay, Si, let's go. Number 1. Who did Arsenal sign Alex Runarsson from?
I do know this.
I thought you were going to get this straight away.
Am I allowed to take his question if I know it?
You don't get the answer. You can have a go at the answer, but you don't get a point for it.
Right.
The French team. Was it Rennes?
No, it was not. Dino?
Dijon mustard.
You are correct.
Dijon, that's it.
Okay. Sam, in what year did Arsenal sign Gabriel Martinelli?
2019.
Takes a lead, 1-0 to Sam. Si, Bukayo Saka was Arsenal's top scorer in the Premier League in 2023-24. How many goals did he score?
23-24. I'm going to go...
with
14.
No, 16.
I was thinking 16.
Chance to take control here, Sam. Santi Cazorla scored a wonderful free kick this week for Oviedo at the ripe old age of 40. He signed for Arsenal back in 2012. Who from?
Malaga.
2-0. Si, who did Ethan Nwaneri score his first Premier League goal against last season?
Forest.
Correct. Dino, who scored the first goal of the Mikel Arteta era at Arsenal?
Aubameyang.
Did. Si, you need this. Jorginho has now completed his move away from Arsenal, but who did he make his debut against after he signed from Chelsea? I thought you'd get this.
No. I mean...
I'll give you a hint. They conceded a goal about a minute after he came on.
Spurs?
No, Everton away in the 1-0 defeat. Just after that was at the start of the run when it was lost to Everton, drew with Brentford, the 1-1 game, and then lost to Man City. And gave City a route back into the title race. So Dino's won.
Another one.
You on 100% so far. You are, Dino. You're 3 out of 3, right? Let's see if you get.
I should have gone batch 2 there.
Yeah, I think batch 2 might be slightly
batch
easier.
1 questions were tough.
All right, Dino. Arsenal won 12 of their opening 13 games in the 2022-23 season. Who was the one team they failed to beat in that run?
Southampton.
No, Manchester United. They lost at Old Trafford 1-0.
Southampton. They drew 1-0. Southampton.
Yeah, that was game 14. That was the first draw, but they lost to United when we were robbed. Gabriel Martinelli scored to take a lead, and were robbed by VAR.
Which VAR then later accepted was wrong, right?
Yes.
Oh, if only that you would have won the league. You would have won the league.
Right, last one for you, Si. Just for the fun of it, Arsenal scored 5 goals in the first half at the London Stadium last season. Who scored the first? It was from a corner. It was from a corner.
I assume it's just Big Gabby.
It was Big Gabby. Yeah. And Dino, last one for you. Arsenal beat Brentford 3-1 on New Year's Day last season. Who scored the goals that day?
Jesus.
Yep.
Martinelli.
Yep.
Mikel Merino.
Correct.
Gosh.
Good knowledge.
Wow, that was good. So that was impressive work from Sam. 4 out of 5 penalties there. I will leave the tiebreaker because we don't need it, frankly. Maybe I'll leave it for next season. So 3-1, Dino takes the lead in the quiz. And that's it. Boys, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This one has gone out on the main YouTube channel as well. If you like what you see and you want to continue to watch this week after week, then sign up, become an Inside Arsenal member, and you get access to this ad-free, of course, and all the other shows are ad-free as well. And next week, I'll be launching a new series called My Arsenal Story, which features each episode an in-depth interview with someone connected with Arsenal, whether it be former player, former coach, employee, fan, even. So, that series starts next week, and you'll be able to get a hold of that ad-free on the Inside Arsenal Patreon page as well. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Enjoy the week, you two. Enjoy the weekend, sorry. You two enjoy the sunshine. And we'll be back next week, who knows, with some actual proper hardcore transfer stuff to talk about. Maybe a new Arsenal signing. That would be nice. Have a good weekend, you two. Catch you soon.
Cheers. Thanks, bye.